Hey guys, it's Brandon Cruz with Damon's Real Texas Barbecue. Doing another video for y'all to show y'all or to discuss cooking a brisket. This is a video that y'all have been asking for quite some time. I haven't done one because there's thousands of videos out on YouTube, and I've watched many of them, and they're really good for the most part. But I think the majority of the videos out there talk about things that really aren't that important when it comes to cooking a brisket. You know, it doesn't matter what you're putting on that brisket. You know, some people live and die by salt and pepper on a brisket, and that's it. Other people, you know, they put a lot of things on their brisket. There's so many things. It doesn't matter. That's the point. It doesn't matter because I've watched a guy one time, if I hadn't have seen it myself, I never would have believed it, but I watched a guy at a cook-off just for fun put nothing but salt on a brisket. He packed that brisket with rock salt, threw it on there, never spritzed it, never did anything, and when it came off, that was a damn good brisket. I'm telling you guys, it does not matter what you're putting on that brisket. Where the real expertise comes in is the actual cooking process of the brisket, the trimming, the way you cook it, how you run that pit. And every pit is different. You know, the concept is all the same, but there's so many things like in videos that I'm seeing where people are saying you got to run your brisket at 250 degrees, or you run your pit at 250 and your brisket's going to come out like this. It's not necessarily true. Your brisket, your pit's not going to run the way my pit does. I have a $5,000 commercial pit in there that runs better than most pits on the market. Then I have cheap pits that I've built at home that run completely different. Every pit out there is going to run differently. And that's what separates a good brisket, is being able to control your pit, make your pit do what you want it to do. Essentially, the word pitmaster, that's where it comes in, is being a pitmaster. It doesn't have anything to do with the preparation of the brisket. It all has to do with the way you run that pit. And that's what this video is going to discuss. I hope that this, actually, I can tell you this. I promise, if you watch this video and you implement the things that we're going to talk about in here, you will be a better pitmaster. Plain and simple. If I hadn't learned these things, I would still be struggling. But what honestly made me a better pitmaster was the fact I had already been cooking for years when I had my first pit built. And that very first pit, when I had it built, it was lucky that at the time I was working for myself. I was a bail bondsman. I made my own hours. And the guy who was building my pit had over 50 years experience building pits and as a pit master. And I was there every day checking the process of the pit and how it was coming along. And me and him would just sit down and we would talk. And he might be outside cooking for his wife or family while he was working on the pit, and I'd watch him. And the things that he did, the things that he told me are what made me a better pit master. It wasn't anything that I was putting on my briskets. It was actually the process of cooking. And he showed me those processes, and it made me a better pit master. So I'm going to do the same today in this video. We're going to cook a brisket. We're going to show you the beginning of it all the way to the end. But during that process, I'm going to talk to you about it and tell you the things to look for. And you're not going to have the same pit that I have here. Your pit's probably going to be a lot different, but the concepts are the same. Whether it's big pit or a small pit, it's the same. So we're going to discuss all that. We're going to get started. I'm going to show you the pit we're going to use today, discuss how it works, how it operates, the flow, the way it drafts, everything. So get ready, let's get started, and let's have some fun. Let's cook some briskets. All right, guys, this is the pit we're going to be using today. This pit is a reverse flow pit. What that means is the exhaust is on the same side as your firebox. So that's why it's called a reverse flow. The reason here and the way that it works, inside there's a plate. that runs all the way from that firebox to the nose of this tank. It's forcing the heat to come all the way underneath this plate, up into the nose and around, and exit on the same side as the firebox. This is considered a reverse flow. You'll see pits, a standard flow or what's called an offset cooker would not have this plate, and the exhaust would be on the side where the nose is, on the opposite side of the firebox. All of them, the concept is the same, but it is going to cook different. The hot spots in this are going to be different. The way it drafts is going to be different. So you need to look at your pit and decide and figure out the way the air flows, the way it drafts. I'm going to show you real quick over here. This is what we call a coal pit. This pit, it runs straight coals. What you would do is you would feed this firebox or this box here with wood on top. It has bars right here that allow the coals to drop through down in here, and then you shovel the coals into the pit. You line that pit full of coals and cook basically like a direct cooker. If you've ever seen Snow's Barbecue in Lexington, Miss Tootsie, she uses brick pits. Basically the same concept, because what she's doing is shoveling straight coals straight into those brick pits. The heat's coming straight up with your meat on top. So that's a different design. There's so many different ways, guys. And the thing that I'm trying to tell you is that every one of these cooks different. They run at different temperatures, and that's okay. You know, I get calls all the time, people asking me, hey, I'm having trouble getting my pit to stay at 250. It wants to get to 300. That's fine. You know, just because Aaron Franklin is cooking at 250 degrees doesn't mean that you have to. His pits are designed for that. Your pit might not be. It might be comfortable at 300 degrees or 325 degrees or more. I personally, my pit that I use every day is comfortable cooking at 350 degrees. I'm not going to try to fight that pit down to 250. I'm going to let it run the way it wants to run, and I'm going to adjust my temperatures or my time according to that temperature. So, and to me, time is money. I don't want to sit there 16 hours working a barbecue pit when I can do it in 7. So, and still get the same product at the end. So anyway, guys, I just wanted to explain that to you. We're going to fire this pit up. I'm going to show you how we build a fire. I build the same fire in every single pit, no matter what way I'm running. What I do, this is a 16 bag of charcoal. I usually get about 4 lights, so I use about 1/4 of the bag every time I light a fire, so about 4 pounds. In this firebox, this is an insulated firebox. It has a rack here to keep the wood right off of the bottom. You want that so that way you have some airflow. Yes, it's starting to eat away because all the fires I've had in there, but it still does the purpose. And that's about it. Just about 1/4 of a bag, just about a little handful of charcoal. It's not all that much. So now the wood we're going to use. Guys, I get asked all the time, what's the best wood to use? I say use whatever you can find. If you live in South Carolina and you're surrounded by hickory, why in the hell are you going to order pecan to cook with? Use hickory. If you're from South Texas and mesquite is everywhere, use mesquite. Around here, pecan is everywhere. There's a pecan tree right there. There's pecan trees everywhere. I can literally throw a rock and hit a pecan tree. So why am I going to order hickory or oak? I use what's available to me, and I suggest you do the same. Now, oak trees are abundant in this area as well. The reason I don't use oak is because my insulated fireboxes are exactly that. They're insulated. They can get they can handle a lot of heat. Well, oak is a harder wood than pecan. So oak gets hotter. The harder the wood, the hotter it's gonna get. Mesquite is one of the hottest woods out there because it's really, really hard. Well, if I was to put a piece of oak in this firebox, my temperatures increase, my average temperature increases 25 to 50 degrees by using oak rather than pecan. So I use this because I'm comfortable with it. You need to do the same. This is a large firebox, so you will notice these pieces are big. I got a call recently from a guy who was using a small 16-inch diameter pit, and he was getting up into the 300s, 350 degree temp, and he wasn't comfortable at that temp. So he asked what he should do. He said, I keep trying to lower the temp on it. I told him, use smaller pieces of wood. So invest in a chainsaw. If you have a small firebox, cut these in half. You don't have to use these great big pieces. Or ask the person you're buying wood from, ask him if he'll make your split smaller. Most people will. So I just wanted to show y'all that. I also wanted to show you, you'll hear people talk about green wood and dry wood. I prefer dry wood, green wood. It can be done. A lot of people use it. I know of restaurants that use green wood. They like the flavor they're getting from it. But to me, it's harder to get green wood started. I like my wood to be 15% moisture or less. This is a moisture meter. It measures how much moisture is inside a piece of wood. Most of the time, these are used at construction sites, houses that have been flooded. But what it's going to show you is how much moisture is inside this piece of wood. So you stab it. That one is a high piece of wood. You see it rating in at 16%. I like to be around 15. Now this, I can feel how light this is. Well, that one's rating a high temp, or a high, well, we're at 16 on that one. Like I said, I really like to be around 15. That piece right there is measuring in at 10%. So this is a really dry piece of wood. So the drier your wood, the easier it is going to be to start a fire. What I usually do is I have 3 cords of wood I keep in different locations, and eventually they make their way here. So I start with 3 cords of split wood, and as I need a cord here at the restaurant, I bring a cord and I replace it and continue the process until it makes it here. And usually when it makes it here, there'll be 15% moisture in the wood. So it's just something that I want to tell y'all, because if you have problems starting your fire, you might check your wood. All right. So even though these are 17%, they still will light. Even up to 18 or 20% I've used, and they'll light. But the drier, the better. That 10% ought to take off like nothing. All right, so what we're doing is we're making a checkered pattern. Put 2 pieces one way and 2 pieces the other. Basically make a checkered pattern. This allows airflow to come and light this wood. Now, what we're going to use to get it to actually ignite it is a pear burner. Here in Texas, these are used often to burn the thorns off of a piece of off of cactus so that cattle can eat it. We use them to light our firewood. Now, in a lot of videos, you'll see somebody will turn these things up as high as they can get them, like this. There's no need for that. You can literally, all you're wanting to do, you're just wasting gas if you turn it up like that. Just leave it right there. Let it sit. We're gonna walk away for about an hour. We don't have it turned up real high. We're gonna forget about this thing and just go take care of other stuff we need done right now. But for an hour, this is gonna sit. When we come back, we're gonna have a damn good fire in here ready to put our briskets on. All right, guys, our fire is just about ready. If you look, you can see the coals are all set. They're all good and hot down there. So as long as you got a good bed of coals, your fire's gonna catch. And you can see them down there at the bottom. So now what we're gonna do is just collapse this wood on top of itself, basically turning all of them the same direction. All right, we're gonna leave that right there. And we're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna show you now, we're gonna put the briskets on the pit. So while that's going, we're just gonna leave that door open. We're gonna keep the gas on it for a little while longer. We're gonna go ahead and put the briskets on the pit, then we'll cut this off. All right guys, so now we're gonna load these briskets. I have already trimmed these, I've already seasoned them. If you're interested in knowing how to trim, go on my YouTube channel, look back at some of our earlier videos. You're gonna see my video on trimming. Only thing I will say that's different in the way I trim now and the way I trimmed at that time is I round my corners on my flat. The reason I do that now, and I didn't at the time, I've noticed more and more when I'm cooking that just the very tip of that flat will sometimes curl up, and those little tips at the end will just dry out. And you're talking minute amount, but by rounding it, it doesn't flip up and dry out. So I've started doing that more now. I do that, I've been doing it for a while. It's the only thing I will say that's different from that video as to what I'm doing right now. So normally I would not have this top rack in here. I would just go ahead and, since we're only doing 3 briskets, I would only use this bottom rack. But because I want to show you the difference in flow and in draft and hot spots, these are the things that are really important in cooking a brisket, is knowing your pit, knowing where your hot spots are. So I'm going to show you right now. Because of this plate, which I showed you earlier, the hottest spot of this pit is going to be in this area right here. This spot's not going to be nearly as hot as over here because that heat is coming around this nose. Now, since heat rises, this top half is going to be hotter than this half. So keep that in mind. Also, you're keeping that in mind because the way you're going to position these briskets. So I'm going to go ahead and load this bottom rack first real quick, knowing that my hottest spot is over here and that the draft, the flow is like this. It's coming from this side, coming up. I'm going to put my thicker end of the brisket, my point, facing that nose because that's where the heat is coming from. So this first brisket, I'm just going to throw this on the ground. There. Now these briskets, like I said, I trimmed them last night. I seasoned them last night. So this is the point. This is the flat. This spot of the pit, this side of the pit doesn't get as hot as this side. So I'm going to put my fatter end to that side. That way, this cooks a little faster than this side. Then they'll both should get done about the same time. Now, if I was to turn it this way, since this is the hotter side, this flat's going to cook faster than this side. It'll be done before this one is, and we don't want that. That's why I'm flipping it this way. I'm also putting the fat side up. That's meat side down. People say, oh, it's because that when the fat renders, it'll go through the meat. That's incorrect. It's not going to affect it whatsoever like that. What it is going to happen, if you were to cook this brisket like this all day, once this fat side starts to render, it's going to get very soft and it's going to stick to this grill. The moment you lift this brisket off to take it off, all your bark is going to be sitting on that grill if you do that. Or all your fat is going to be stuck right there. So that's why we cook fat side up. Not so that the fat will render and go through the meat. It's so that once it does render, it doesn't stick. All right, so those 2 briskets are on. Normally, like I said, I wouldn't even have this rack in here because this is just 3 briskets, but I want to show you that how important it is to know the flow of your pit, the draft. This brisket is going to get done a lot faster than these because it's hotter up here than it is down here. Also, guys, a lot of people don't like hot spots, and a lot of people, great pit builders like AJ's Custom Cookers, who built this firebox, who also built Fat Amy. AJ will build you a pit that will have no hot spots if you want. He'll put tuning plates in there and he'll get rid of all your hot spots where you can cook evenly. Now, I prefer having hot spots in my pit, and I know that sounds crazy, but I don't cook just briskets every day. I cook chicken, I cook briskets, I cook ribs, I cook pork butts, I cook turkey. So I would rather have a spot that I know is hotter where I can throw my chickens on if I need to, or if my ribs aren't cooking as fast as I want them to, I can move it over to that hotter area. So I like that. You might not. You might be the type of person who only wants that, set his pit at 250 and it stays at 250. If you're that person, then you need to look into a more advanced pit, a better pit, one built by somebody like AJ or M&M. There's tons of great pit builders out there. Okay, guys, so now we got that brisket on. We're going to cut this fire off. All right, so let me grab my... Always keep a poker. You're going to need a poker all the time to move fire around. You can see these logs are starting to break down, which is good. That sucker's hot. All right, we're going to let it run. In the daylight, you can't really see the flames as much as you could if it was darker, but trust me, there's a good fire coming out. All right, guys, next thing, these vents. I get asked all the time about trying to get a pit to 250 degrees, that people have gotten to where they believe that is the ideal temperature to cook a brisket. I'm sorry, guys, that's not true. It's great, you want to cook low and slow, and it's great cooking low and slow, but cook where the pit wants to go. Quit thinking of this thing as some dragon you have to slay. It's not. It's more of letting it do its thing, and you're just there tending to it and making sure things don't get out of control. So keep your vents open all the way. Let the pit run the way it was designed to run. Right now, if you can tell, you see this smoke, there's smoke going in, it's pulling. With this door open, this fire would just be stagnant. It would never go into the chamber. But by closing the door and just having these little vents, it's sucking air right now, building that fire, and it's forcing it to come out the top of the exhaust. And if you look up, you can see we got plenty of smoke, and it's clear blue smoke. That isn't thick smoke. It's nice and clean. It's what you want. Okay, another thing I want to show you guys. If you can see, the nose of this pit is sticking down. The reason it is because there's a drain at the nose of this thing. If I was to have the nose raised up, the grease wouldn't be draining out. Instead, it would be moving towards that firebox. If you ever do that, and that fire gets back there, that grease gets back to that fire, you will have a grease fire on your hands like you wouldn't believe. This whole thing will be basically a big bomb that'll go off. If that happens to you guys, do not make the mistake of opening that door. The thing you do is you go back here to this firebox and you shut these vents, because a fire cannot breathe without air. As long as you close those vents, that fire will die. Do not go, and if you have a way to close your exhaust, don't close it. Open your exhaust all the way because you want that nasty grease smoke to get out of there. You don't want it to stay in that chamber because it's going to end up in your food. Now, when a fire breaks out, there's a good chance you're going to lose whatever's on there. But if you cut it off right away, cut that flame off, keep this lid shut, make sure your exhaust is all the way open, there's a chance you can save it. Just going to have to let it sit for about 30 minutes. Don't touch that door, because if you open that door, as soon as it gets air, that fire is going to ignite again, that grease fire. So just leave it shut and pray. And then in about 30 minutes, you can go over there, open the door, and see if you ruined all your meat or not. I have had a couple grease fires in my life, and I have been able to save the meat about once or twice. So don't give up hope just because a grease fire happens. But try to avoid it as best as you can by keeping your pit clean and by making sure that your drains are easily accessible. Like I said, on this, you need to have the pit, the nose down, so that way all the grease drains out. Okay, so right now we closed our fire. Right now I noticed our temp is coming up. Right now we're at 240 almost, and it's going to keep climbing. I'm comfortable running this pit 350 degrees, but I'm gonna let it do what it wants. I'm not gonna try to force it there. I'm not gonna put a ton of wood in that firebox to get it to 350. All I'm gonna do is keep a nice fire and keep it where it wants to run. Guys, you're gonna notice temperatures, a pit run different today than it would 6 months from now. We're out here right now, this is July. It's hot, pit's running good. But in December, it could run differently. Or let's say there's a storm approaching and the barometric pressure in the air is different. The pit's gonna run different. I'm telling you this because I know it, because I run a pit every day. And every day I'm using the same wood, start it the same way, but you can tell days that, hey, the humidity's different in the air. I've cooked in mountains, and altitude affects your cooking. Everything can affect the way a pit runs, but if you do it enough, you'll notice those differences and you know what to do to get it where you want it if you have to. But right now this pit's running great. We're gonna let it sit. I'm gonna monitor the temp. I'm gonna put another stick of wood on right now before I go in. And I got briskets to trim for tomorrow, so I'm gonna go in there, trim those. In about an hour, I'm gonna come back and check to see where this temp is. I'm not even concerned what these briskets look like. I'm not gonna even open this door probably for another 4 hours. So right now, my concern is that firebox and keeping my temperature steady and letting the pit do its thing. All right, guys, so right now it's about time to wrap one of those briskets, and as you can see, it's coming down pretty hard. Normally the rain doesn't affect me because I'm in my little pit room over there, but since we're cooking on that open pit, I don't feel like running across all this. I'll wait. I looked at the radar, it'll pass through in a couple minutes. All right, guys, it's been about an hour and a half since I've checked the pit, and I did that intentionally too, and we have rain, but I did it so that I wanted the pit, I wanted it to drop temperature some. It's been sitting here at 300 all day. The reason I wanted it to drop, I wanted those coals to pretty much burn down to ash so that I can show you how to get that fire going again, because you're gonna experience, there's gonna be times that you probably wake up in the middle of the night and be like, man, my alarm didn't go off. I need to go check the pit, and get out there and there's nothing left. All the coals are dead, your pit's dropped, you're freaking out. Don't freak out. I did this intentionally. The pit is now at 200 degrees. I've been running at 300. I let it drop. And then when the rain came, that helped cool too. So I want y'all to see that it dropped. This brisket is ready to wrap. This is the one that started like that. An hour and a half ago when I came and checked it, this had a beautiful bark on it, but this didn't yet. So I rotated it and I put it that way. This is what it looked like when I rotated it. These are the ones we had lower heat. You notice how beautiful the bark is on these sides? That's because the flow, the draft of this pit, that heat is coming from underneath, coming across the top, and this is what's getting cooked first. This doesn't have the color yet that I want. It doesn't matter what this temperature is right now. It could be, I'm gonna guess, maybe 175, maybe more. Sitting at almost 180. Normally, you would want to wrap, but I don't go by temperature on wrapping. I go by color. And this color on this end just isn't where I want it yet. So I'm gonna rotate these out. I'll rotate them by putting the flat now facing that end where the heat is coming across. This is gonna darken this up, then they'll be ready to wrap, like this one is now. Now the reason that got done faster is because, like I said, I've been running 300 today. If you notice where my temperature gauge is, when I close that door, that temperature gauge is sitting right about here. It's reading the temp of this higher rack. It's not reading this lower rack. This lower rack is probably 75 degrees, maybe 100 degrees difference. So it's gonna cook and get color faster up here than up here. And that's what I was explaining to y'all earlier about cooking hot and fast and low and slow. Well, these down here are cooking low and slow. This is probably sitting around, if I've been running 300 all day up here, this is probably, if I'm guessing, 75 degrees lower. So it's probably been running about 225, maybe 250. So it's getting quite a bit less heat. Anyway, we're gonna wrap this up. I'm gonna put it back up here. It's gonna finish probably an hour and a half before these two briskets down here. And when we cut it, I'm gonna show you that this brisket still has great smoke ring. It's gonna be just as tender and just as juicy as those, but it was cooked a lot faster. So the pit's just doing what it likes right now. But anyway, let's get these wrapped up. I'll put it back on, and then I'm gonna get this pit fired back up for you and show you that it's not gonna hurt these briskets one bit. All right, guys, so now we're here in the pit room. I've cut a little section of paper. I have a mark on the wall, so I know kind of about how wide I want my paper or how long. I use 24-inch butcher paper. With 24-inch butcher paper, I never have any problem as far as, no matter how big the brisket is, I usually can wrap it without any problem. 18-inch paper, I can't do that. But anyway, what I do is I set it down, and I set it about the width of the brisket away from the edge. And I'm gonna do one wrap and one flip. Straighten the edges. And then I just roll it. And now, if you remember, when I set it down here, I set it just the same way it was at the pit. I want with the fat side up. This, I can feel this is the fat side up. That's the side I want facing up when I roll it. This is now the bottom side, so that's where I want to keep it. If I didn't have enough paper here, I would roll it back out, flip it, and make sure that I had the side sticking up that I want. So continue with the fat side up. Now that it's wrapped, this thing can take a lot of heat. So without catching on fire, I'm going to put it back on there. The temperature we're going for is around 203 to 207 is the internal temp I'm looking for. So like I said, guys, I don't wrap until I get the color of the bark that I want. Because once you've wrapped, that bark's not going to get any darker. It's not going to improve anymore. You're stuck with whatever color you got at that moment on that bark. So that's why I say, you know, people say, oh, you wrap at 165 degrees. Wrong. You wrap at the color that you want your bark at. You might go the whole time and realize that you're at 203 internal temperature and you never wrapped it because the bark maybe never got to the color where you were satisfied. So that's why I say you might wrap, you might not, but there is no specific temperature when wrapping. You wrap when you like the color of the bark. Then you go ahead and wrap it. But now this thing will take plenty of heat. We're gonna go put it up there, back on where it was. It'll probably finish, I'm guessing, an hour and a half. This thing should be done and ready to be put up. About the same time those lower ones are ready to wrap up. So anyway, let's go put it on there, and then I'm going to show you that we can get that pit relit without there being any damage to the briskets or anything like that. So let's go do that right now. All right, guys, so we're going to stick this sucker back on the pit. Right now, I'm just going to throw it on there. I'm not going to worry about the point facing one way or anything like that, because now it's wrapped and it's not going to get darker on one side or anything like that. I'm going to put it this way. The point is facing out towards me, so that way next time I open it, I can easily do an internal temp on it from this point in, just slide it in, and I'll be able to see what my internal temp is. So we are looking for, here lately, been pulling around 207. So that's the temp I'm going to go for. When it hits 207, that sucker's coming off. And now I'm going to show you that we can get this pit back up to temp without any worry or heartache. And look, I can show you that there's nothing in there right now. We are just ash. All right, guys, so like I said, we have ash mainly in here. There's some good coals still in there. You can see it, all those nice hot coals. So that's what you want. As long as you got those, you're okay. So I'm gonna use small pieces of wood. And look, these are wet. It just rained, and we will get this pit going again. You can even hear the water as I set it in there evaporating. So we're gonna do a checkered pattern. Notice this side's a little bit dry, so we're gonna put that towards the bottom. And we're gonna do a checkered pattern again, just like we originally started. We're gonna walk away. Forget about it for the next 5 to 10 minutes. We're gonna leave this door wide open. Right now, it's not drawing. There's nothing really pulling through and coming out the top. We just got a fire basically starting. The pit's not gonna change, it's just gonna sit here. Once this thing gets going again, we'll come over here, we'll close the door, and we'll be back in business. There's no reason to freak out. It will catch. If it doesn't catch here shortly, we'll put the propane to it again, but it should catch. So we're gonna take a break, 10-15 minutes. I'm gonna come back and check. All right, guys, so it's been about 10-15 minutes, and there we go. Fire started right back up. The way I knew it started, we were sitting over there, smoke was billowing out of the firebox. As soon as that smoke stopped, I knew the fire was lit. Come over here, all we gotta do now, close our door. Once again, I've not touched these vents for the entire duration of this cook. I'm letting this pit do what it wants. I am comfortable, this pit's comfortable running at 300 degrees, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. That's where it likes to be. I'm letting it do its thing. Now, if it starts getting up in the neighborhood of 350, where I know this pit doesn't like to run, like that's hot, then I'll start adjusting these. But right now, she's running great. She's back up and running. No effects whatsoever. Right now we're sitting, look how low we are. We're at 165. We'll come check in another 20 minutes or so, and I'm pretty sure this sucker will be right back up to temp where she likes to be, around 300. So no harm, no foul. These briskets are still cooking just like we wanted them. So we'll see where we are in a little while. All right, guys, we're back. It's been about an hour and a half since we put the wrap brisket on. We're gonna check it out. I'm pretty positive this sucker is done. Oh yeah, I can feel it. It's like a little soft pillow. And if you notice, the ones we were waiting to get good color, they got good color now. Now I'm comfortable wrapping that brisket. We're gonna test it too before we wrap it to make sure that it's not done already, but I don't think it is. But this one should be. And she is. 207 is the goal I was headed for, and that's where she sat. Oh, 208. She's perfect. Perfect. So now this one, we're going to check these two that we have not wrapped yet, but the color is fantastic on both of them. There we go. They're 190 basically. I'm willing to bet this one's probably sitting somewhere the same. It's upside down, but it's 185, so I think we are ready to wrap those. They'll be done shortly, but this one is going to come off and go into the proofer. So a lot of y'all probably don't know what a proofer is. A proofer is a big insulated warming box that we set at 145 degrees. We put the brisket that is now done into that to rest. It will rest all night long until it is ready to be cut and served tomorrow. It can sit in there all night. I've let them sit in there for 24 hours. And it's ready whenever. It won't cook anymore. It's not going to fall apart anymore. It's done cooking now. At this point, it's just going to rest. If you don't have a proofer at home, you still need to let your brisket rest before you slice it. So at least let it rest an hour before you decide to cut it. You can also extend that time by, let's say, if you want to put it in a cooler and put the lid down on it and let it stay in there for 4 hours or so to rest, and let you go that long. That's the safe bet. Once it reaches 100 or drops under 140 degrees, then you need to immediately get it back above that temperature, or you need to serve it or get it below 40 degrees. So anyway though, but it's going into the proofer. It'll sit there tomorrow. We're going to cut that brisket, and I'm going to write right across the top of it, top, so that we know it was cooked on the top rack of this pit at 300 degrees pretty much all day long. The briskets underneath were cooked much slower because it's not as hot on that lower rack. Those are going to take probably another hour or so before they're done, hour to hour and a half, and then they're going to go into the proofer too. Tomorrow we're going to cut that brisket, and I'm going to prove to you that it's just as good as these briskets that were cooked at a lower temp, but we did it a whole lot faster, which time is money to me, so I'd rather be home with my family, get done, and get back home. So anyway, guys, we'll cut it tomorrow. You will see it. I'm not going to worry about showing you these. I'm going to wrap them right now. They're going to go right back on that pit until they finish up. They're going to go in the proofer, and tomorrow we're going to show you how good that brisket is. All right, guys, good morning. We are about to open here shortly at the restaurant, so I want to apologize if you hear noises, people coming in and out, or pots banging. I apologize now because we're getting ready to open here shortly. You'll hear my alarm when people are going through other buildings too. So anyway, guys, these are the briskets we cooked last night. This is the one I marked at top. That's the one that we cooked on the top rack. These are the two that we cooked on the lower rack. So this one came off at 7:45. One of these briskets was the last to come off, and it came off at 9:30. So, and this whole video isn't to say, oh, one way is better than the other. What I'm trying to show you is there's more ways to skin a cat than just one. But anyway, guys, this one was cooked hot and fast. These were cooked slow, low and slow. 300 degrees for the whole cook on this one. So this one was on the lower shelf, which I should have put a temperature gauge or something there so we could have read what that lower gauge was. But I know it usually cooks about 75 degrees at the max lower. It's usually about 50 degrees difference, about 50 degrees between the two shelves. So if I was cooking at 300 the entire time on this top one, then that lower shelf was probably running around 250. But anyway, we're going to cut them both so that way you see that there is no difference. I mean, it's just your preference. And to me, my preference is hot and fast just because to me, time is money. But Look at this brisket. It is just, I mean, it's like gelatin. That we pulled it at 207. Same thing with the other ones. We pulled those at 207 as well. So I'm going to cut it right here in the center, separating the point and the flat. All right, so that is the flat, guys. And you see there's still a real pretty smoke ring, even cooking hot and fast. And guys, I didn't mention this yesterday, but a smoke ring, what that is, that's a chemical reaction. Once the internal temp of this brisket reaches 130 degrees, it's not going to take smoke anymore. So a lot of people have asked me, hey, do you take your briskets and lay them out, you know, to get to room temperature before you put them on the pit? No, I don't. I throw them right on the pit. The reason, and to me, and I might be wrong, but the reason is I know that once that brisket reaches 130 degrees, it's not going to take it's not going to take smoke anymore. So to me, if I start at a lower temp, I have a longer opportunity to put smoke into that brisket. That's my way of thinking. I could be wrong. I don't know, but I feel like it's right. All right. But I'm going to cut this right here, this marbled side, so you can see it. It looks beautiful. We're going to cut a couple slices here. Look at those slices, and they are gorgeous. So look, just as pretty as that can be. Just gorgeous, all of them. So anyway, that was our marble, our point. I'm going to show you the lean side, and I'm going to start here at the very front of it, so that way you can see that this brisket is good and tender. All the way, no matter where you're cutting it, this is a good brisket. Look at that. Just as pretty as it can be. I can't even, it just tears. So that was the one cooked hot and fast, guys. Now I'm going to show you the ones that were cooked low and slow, and it's going to be the same. I'm telling you, it doesn't matter one way. So all right, this is the one that was running on that lower shelf, sat probably about 250, still great feel. Cut it right there in half, and look at that, just as pretty as it can be. Great brisket. Our lean side, same thing. Just a great brisket. These are both primes. Cut right here. These are the burnt ends right here, by the way. Man, they cut a few of those for you. Look at that brisket. They are as tender as can be. Just a great slice of brisket, guys. Great slice of brisket. I'll do the same side just so you can see.
Kitchen door.
This one I can feel a little firmer, but it's still a great brisket. And it's still a tender brisket. You can see, because you can see how the bottom there, and a great smoke ring too. Just a little bit firmer than the other one, but not much, still very tender. So guys, I hope this helps. If you have questions, feel free to message me. I have no problem. If I can find the time, I'll answer your messages back. I have people that even call the restaurant. That's not a good idea because we take a lot of phone calls through the for the restaurant number. But there's also, if you listen to the answering machine, there's a number for catering. That's my personal cell phone number. If you ever have a question, call me, feel free. I'll be glad to answer anything that I possibly can for you. Thank y'all for watching. Like and subscribe. We'll talk to y'all next time. God bless you, and remember, smoked meat, not meth. Y'all take care.